All right, so last night the Warriors won Game 7 on the road, officially ending the first round. So now we're gonna do winners and losers of the first round. I'm not gonna be able to get to everybody, so if you feel like I missed somebody, let me know in the comments down below. But we're gonna start with a winner, maybe the biggest winner if we're talking about like the perception of this player. Julius Randle put up 22 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, didn't really turn the ball over, shot amazing from 3, and played great defense on LeBron and at times Luka. Now things can change very, very fast, and the Lakers were actually a good matchup for Julius Randle. If he's bad against the Warriors, the conversation might shift. But the reason why Julius was first of mind for me is when you look around the NBA, there aren't many teams that are going to be signing up to give Julius Randle the role of second option. A lot of teams have their guys, and Julius Randle is not someone that people are looking at and saying, I want him as one of the pillars of my team. So it is extremely important for Minnesota to leave this playoff run feeling like Julius Randle is one of the guys we can build around, and he did a lot to go in that direction in the first round. And I was very happy for Julius Randle, but I am a little bit worried about this matchup with the Warriors. We can save that for that series talk, but first winner of that first round for me is Julius Randle. My first loser is gonna be, I wanna say Memphis as a whole, but specifically Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Now, Ja Morant, in his words, was figuring out OKC, but long story short, he had a down year and yet another season where he did not finish the year out healthy, right? So let's put that to the side. In the case of Jaren Jackson Jr., now if you look at his playoff stats in totality, as a 6'10 forward, he is shooting below 40% from the field. He is averaging 1.1 assists to 1.9 turnovers. Per 36, he averages 5 fouls. In his playoff career, he only averages 30 minutes per game because he can't stay on the court. And if you're building around this guy as one of the, I keep saying pillars, but if he's one of the pillars of your team, and this is what he does in the playoffs, I don't know. I've never been a Jaren Jackson Jr. guy, but the idea that he can be the second best player on a real contender might not be true. Now, I don't know if you guys believe that, but a lot of people believe he is that good of a player. I don't see it. And in the playoffs, we see his production drop significantly. So to me, Memphis as a whole, Ja and Jaren were big losers in this first round. Now, would it be crazy to give a winner to a player that was on a team that got swept and was the worst margin of victory in a sweep of all time? That would be crazy, right? But I want to give Davion Mitchell, I want to call Davion Mitchell a winner of this first round. In the series, he put up 15 points, 6 assists, shot 61% from the field, 50% from 3. Do I believe that's sustainable? Obviously not. But he showed himself to be a different offensive player in Miami. He showed a lot more aggression with his 3-ball. The defense didn't drop off. And when you look at this Miami team, I think there's a real chance that he earned himself a starting point guard spot next year. This is a guy that was playing behind De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton. He's never really had this opportunity, and he took full advantage of it. And I think he's a real candidate for most improved player next year. Like I said, of course, he's not going to shoot as well as he did in the playoffs, but can I see a world where he puts up 15 and 6 next year on the Heat? I actually can, because Wiggins is not going to be overly aggressive on offense. We know Bam's not going to be aggressive on offense, and they need another real shot creator. And I'm not sure I would classify Davion Mitchell as a shot creator, but for this Miami team, I think he's going to be that next year. And I think he earned it in the playoffs, even though the Heat got absolutely demolished in that first round. All right, next loser here. And this is a player where I feel like people are overreacting to what happened, but he was bad, and it is a big deal. And I'm talking about Austin Reaves. Austin is someone that people were saying is going to be an all-star consideration next year. And I still think that is a possibility. Like I said, we're overreacting a little bit to what happened. Austin couldn't beat Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels one-on-one. That's what happened in this series. I don't think any of us should be too shocked by that. But the reason why it is a big deal is the equation is now different in LA. There's no more Anthony Davis behind you. And you're playing with Luka Doncic, who we know his shortcomings on defense. So if you're not going to be, I don't want to say elite, but if you're not going to be able to create and you're kind of a liability on defense, it makes you wonder, is that someone I want to put next to Luka long term? But I really feel like if that's your takeaway from that series, that's not really fair. Now, I think the offensive questions are more reasonable. But Austin Reaves guarding Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle, we know that's not going to work. But do I believe Austin can compete and has enough size to be a starting backcourt mate with Luka on a championship level team? I actually do. I actually do believe that. Obviously not on a team with no center. And sorry to keep going back to that pillar word, but I think Rob Pelinka actually mentioned Austin as a pillar of the team. That I don't agree with. I think Austin is replaceable. I don't think he is special, but I don't see why you would want to move on from Austin. I think he's a very good player. At best, he is a borderline all-star. At the worst, he is one of the best 6 men in the NBA, which on his current deal would be worth it. Now, he is extension eligible this summer, which adds to the conversation, but I think there is some overreaction going on. That was just a terrible matchup across the board for how the Lakers were built. So Austin was a big loser in this first round. And you know what? Another winner, why not go with Game 7 Buddy? Game 7 Buddy. All year, Warriors fans have been saying, why does Steve Kerr trust Buddy Hield so much? You got to give Moody those minutes, or, you know, whoever those minutes. And Steve Kerr, I have my criticisms of Kerr, but this one guy in particular, Steve Kerr stuck with him all year. And all year, people have been laughing at the idea of him being the Klay replacement. In this series, he was Klay Thompson. Maybe that's a stretch, but in the Warriors' last 3 wins, Buddy Hield was crucial. And Game 7 goes without saying, but in Game 3, the game without Jimmy Butler, the Warriors were losing that game. They were down by 12 points with 5 minutes left in the second quarter. Buddy Hield scores 8 points in that 5 minutes. The Warriors go into halftime only down by 3 points. If Buddy doesn't have that stretch, the Warriors might be going home right now. Of course, he has the Game 7 as well, but I remember that specific moment in Game 3 that really kind of shifted that game. So Buddy Hield is a big winner for me. I also think Steve Kerr is a big winner in this first round. A lot of people criticize Steve Kerr, including me. I think you got to give him credit for what happened here. You got to give him credit for trusting Buddy when everybody wanted Buddy benched all year. You got to give him credit for going back to Kevon Looney, who had his best game of the series in Game 7. So shout out to Steve Kerr. That's why he's a 4-time championship coach and we're not. Oh, and also a Buddy Hield I forgot to point out, which is a big deal. Buddy Hield was great on defense in this series. Now, some of that is Jalen Green being Jalen Green, but I think overall this year, Buddy Hield has been a much better defender than you would have thought. He's been bought in. He's been trying really hard, and Buddy Hield is a big body dude. It's not like, you know, he's not small out there. So Buddy Hield did a great job defensively, kind of like the Klay role. Buddy Hield was amazing. And speaking on that, a loser has to be Jalen Green here. He couldn't beat Buddy Hield. He couldn't beat Steph Curry. Now, I'm not going to do the disingenuous thing and act like, oh, it was just him one-on-one. Obviously, there was help there. But there were moments where he could not beat Steph Curry and Buddy Hield one-on-one. There were moments where he was getting ripped by Buddy Hield at half court, and he could not make his threes in this series. So if you're a Jalen Green believer, you can't help believe this series with some serious doubts about who he is as a playoff performer. Now, it was his first go-round, but the Rockets seem to be in the process of accelerating things. I think they're going to make a huge mistake this summer and go get Kevin Durant. I think that's a very, very, I just wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But Jalen Green showed himself to be expendable. And to just keep it on the Rockets for a second, I think Şengün has to be a winner. I think he did a decent job on Draymond. I think Draymond is allowed to get away with fouls that other guys aren't. And I'm not saying that. That's just kind of how it goes, right? If you have that reputation, you get away with more. When you're known for being a physical defender, the refs kind of expect that from you. So I think Şengün did a pretty good job of fighting through that. And I also was impressed with Şengün executing on defense, right? A lot of times he was the one switching out on Curry, or not straight switching, but the Rockets were running this zone where they kept handing off Steph Curry to different defenders. And I think Şengün in those situations did a good job. Although I think Steph Curry could have did more to attack that, but I can't say that because people are going to say I'm hating on Steph Curry again. So let's keep it moving. Also, Amin Thompson has to be a winner here for his defense on Steph Curry, and I think he showed a lot on the ball, creating in the mid-range. And I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but his mid-range jumper looks exactly like Zion. Maybe not the exact form, but how they get there, how they rise up, and how they land on that 1 foot, it looks exactly like Zion. And I'm not sure that's not a positive or a negative, but it's just funny to watch. And I guess the way I would say that is a positive, because Zion, I think the most underrated part about Zion is the handle, right? If he had the same skill set, but his handle was 20% worse, his game would not work. But he's able to get to that left hand whenever he wants to, because that first step is crazy. The in and out, how he gets low to the ground. He has a pretty special handle for someone his size. So Amin Thompson showed a lot with the handle that gives me a lot more confidence about him being not a go-to scorer, but someone that can go get a bucket at times. So big winner for him. And just to finish off with Houston here, I don't think Jabari or Tari were winners or losers. I think it was interesting that Jabari didn't play more. Now, no one could have predicted the impact that Steven Adams had, right? I think going into the series, they probably thought Jabari would play more if Steven Adams didn't turn into prime Dwight Howard. And I like Tari Eason, but I'm pretty sure if you were to ask the Warriors coaches and players, would they rather see Tari Eason in the game or Jabari Smith? I'm pretty sure they were happy when Tari was in the game over Jabari, especially when the Rockets just needed a couple more threes to win this series, and Jabari still couldn't get, I mean, he played, right? He played, but I feel like there was a bigger role for him in this series. So that going into the summer is also intriguing, but I don't feel like Jabari did anything wrong here. So I don't want to call him a loser, right? You know who I almost forgot as a winner of the first round? Russell Westbrook. Played great defense, hit threes, competed on the boards, gave you a little bit of everything. And I don't want to give Russ too much credit, but when you look at his leadership, his energy, his belief, in comparison to the other side of the court with James Harden and Kawhi, the Clippers really could have used someone like a Russ to ignite them, to push them, to make sure they weren't just going to give up in a game 7 in the third quarter. Russ has been great all year. Everybody was worried about the playoff experience. So far, he's been great in the playoffs as well. Now they go play OKC. That's going to be amazing theater to watch, Russ back in OKC. But when you really look at Denver's roster and their lack of development in their young guys besides Christian Brown, they would be in a very, very bad place if Russ didn't work out this year. So shout out to Russ. But there were so many more in this first round. I can't get to them all. I guess we can do a quick rapid fire. On the loser front, James Harden. I don't want to harp on it too much. You know, I thought about making a video ranking the all-time Harden playoff stinkers, and this one wouldn't even be top 5. So we're not going to harp on that one too much. I also think Kawhi was a bit of a loser, just in the sense that after game 2, people were talking about Kawhi like he's still a top 5 player in the NBA, and he did not perform up to that level the rest of that series, but it is what it is. No one seems to care. I think Pascal Siakam had a very good first round series, and it seems like he has now taken the torch from Jrue Holiday as the most underrated player in the NBA. It seems like we keep hearing that name as the most underrated player in the NBA. And I would say that is fair, because consistency can sometimes be overlooked and be underrated. So Pascal Siakam was a winner of the first round. The Bucks in general as a franchise were a loser in the first round. We don't need to rehash the ramifications of that or potential ramifications. So the Bucks were a loser. I think Cade was a winner. Obviously, Brunson, game winner to send them home, was a winner. So much happened here. Franz had a bounce back series after his stinker against Cleveland last year. Tyrese Halliburton hit a game winner over Giannis. After being voted most overrated by his peers. So much is going on. And at the beginning, it seemed like it was going to be a great first round. Then midway through, it seemed like we were going to get a bunch of 5-game series. It seemed like the Warriors were going to go in 5. The Timberwolves obviously end up winning in 5, but Houston making a comeback and the Bucks giving us a little bit of a fight made it for a better first round series than it could have been a lot worse. Could have been a lot worse. So those are my winners and losers. I know I'm missing an obvious one. Let me know in the comments down below. Please like, comment, subscribe. It will mean the world to me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm out. Peace.